Hey folks, Brian Havens here with a workshop update. I've been working on some tools aimed directly at helping me make boxes and drawers and things like that more effectively. One of the problems is when you're using a larger metal hand plane on drawer stock, it's really thin. This can be a little bit top heavy and a little bit harder to work with. So the first hand plane I came up with was a smaller hand plane, a little lower profile. It fits nicely in the hands. It's nice for working on thinner stock, whereas a larger metal plane, it's harder to keep that thing balanced on a little, maybe 3/8 or 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, whatever drawer stock you happen to be using. The other thing that this hand plane ended up being really good for, because it's fat in the back half and a little bit skinnier here, is I've been able to use what I've been calling a reference block. That I hold a square block up against here, and I'm able to make the edges nice and square instead of having to run over to the jointer. So there's the first one. The second tool I made is a nice long skinny wooden hand plane. This one is intended for both straight edging drawer stock. I could use a metal number 5. But again, it's a little bit top heavy. It tends to fall over when you're using thin stock. Very heavy for that kind of work. This one's a lot lighter, better for working with thinner stock, smaller stock. The other thing that this is intended to be used for, which I haven't been able to test out yet because I haven't made any more drawer boxes. The idea, usually when you're making a drawer box, some of the edges aren't quite right. They need to be flushed up. And if you use something that's like this, you don't have support. You get over here and you have the same problem. It's hard to balance it on the edge. So the idea with this one is there's always either the front or the back of the plane is always referencing off an opposite edge, keeps it nice and level. So the idea is if this isn't quite right, if I'm not really flush on the corner there, the idea is I can use this to clean it up without having to stay focused on balancing a hand plane on thin stock the whole time. The third item, the third tool I've been working on, which so far has been an absolute failure, but I'm still working on it. This is supposed to be a grooving plane. I've seen other grooving planes where they have a fence built right into the side, but then you have to have a pair of grooving planes, so you can go either direction depending on what the grain is like on the stock you're trying to groove. The idea here is I use an auxiliary fence and I just reference along the side of the plane. I can flip it over and come the other direction without having to have a whole set of hand planes. The problem I'm having with this one is I can't keep this bit set for some reason. I have a couple of ideas on how to remedy that, so I haven't given up on this yet, but right now this is kind of on the shelf while I think about it a little bit more. Now, the fourth tool, I thought, a really simple tool that I've noticed I needed a couple of occasions. One recently when I was up in Montana with Todd working on the shaker bench, I was putting together the drawer boxes and the stock dados. Some of them were just need to go a little bit more, but to have to run back over the router and set it back up again was kind of a nuisance. So the idea, usually you try to get a chisel in there, but usually a 1/4 inch chisel is about as thin as you have in most sets, and obviously you can't fit that in an 1/8 inch or a 5/16 slot. You have to kind of work sideways and try to work it out that way. It would be really nice if you had a nice narrow chisel, a nice 1/8 inch chisel that you can get right into that groove and work lengthwise with the groove. Much easier to do work like that. I've also thought about needing an 1/8 inch chisel, doing some inlay channels around the edge of a table. That's another time I thought an 1/8 inch chisel would be useful. So I went online and I checked out some of the prices and see if they're even available. There was a couple of manufacturers that did have 1/8 inch chisels, but they wanted $27-37 for these. Now I make a lot of my own tools, both for flat wood hand tools and on the lathe. So I use a lot of bits from the metalworking industry. So what I found that they have is a nice 1/8 inch square bit, 2.5 inches long, and I paid 90 cents for that. They're 90 cents a piece. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go over to the lathe and see if I can come up with a nice handle to go with this bit, and then I'll grind it up to an 1/8 inch, and we'll try it out. So if you want to, that's the update, but if you want to stick around, I'm going to go over to the lathe and do some turning. Alright, here we are back at the lathe, and I've decided to use for my tool handle some pear wood for a couple of reasons. One, pear wood is really nice wood for hand tools. It's very stable once it's dried. It's impossible to dry sometimes. It's nice and tight grained, so it's not going to have a lot of little pores and stuff exposed for dirt to collect in. And plus, I find that I usually finish my hand tools with just boiled linseed oil, and I really like the feel of the wood, and I especially like the way that pear wood feels in the hand when you're holding on to it. It's nice and smooth. Another reason I'm using pear wood is this is actually from the very first tree that I harvested back in September 2009. Back when I really didn't know how to chop up a tree properly. So I had this one log that I ended up just chopping up into like 100 different pen blanks. And there's no way I'm going to ever make 100 pear wood pen blanks, not in the next 30 years or so. So I've been using some of these blanks that for smaller hand tools. So let's get started. The tool I'm choosing to make this handle for the 1/8 inch chisel is a 1/4 inch round skew. This is actually a shop made tool. You can get a tool like this at a retailer maybe $35–40. But I made this one for about $5. Again, I used a tool bit from the machine working industry. It's a 1/4 inch round high-speed steel, 8 inches long, and a copper fitting for the ferrule. And this is actually Buminga left over from my tatami bed. So the whole thing cost me about $5 to make. Plus, I have the experience of making a nice tool. Now, so I really like skews. A lot of people, even professional turners, loathe skews. They have a bad reputation for doing catches. But I love skews, and the reason I like skews is because I don't know of any other tool during spindle work that you can do a larger variety of cuts with. So I'm gonna do this. In fact, I'm gonna give myself a challenge. I'm gonna do this whole handle with nothing but this 1/4 inch round skew. Let's see if I can do that. All right. So the first thing I need to do is rough out this blank. This uses just a variation of a planing cut. This is another variation of a planing cut. I actually don't know what this is called. I learned this from watching Richard Raffin, I think is the way it says it. Nice aggressive cut. This is a regular planing cut, but since I'm still kind of roughing, I kind of dig the end in there, do a little bit of peeling, get a little more material off. Not as clean a cut, but it gets the material off. And then usually I'll come back around, instead of putting that tip in, that's where you get a nice clean cut. Feels pretty good. Clean up this edge a little bit. It's a variation on a V-cut, except there's nothing else to cut on this side. Clean up that face. Not too far. Measure for my. I'm gonna get a little extras. Here's my ferrule. So normally, since I would use I would probably use a carding tool to do the step, but since I've taken the challenge of making the whole thing with a skew, I'm going to use the skew instead. be to give me a place to do a peeling cut. Good. Give it a little undercut here. Alright, let's see how that fits. A little bit snug still. Shave just a little bit more off of that. Just a hair. Since I don't want to be too aggressive, I'm just going to do a scraping cut. So I put the factory edge in here because it's nice and clean, and the one that I cut in half, cut the fitting in half on the outside so I can clean it up. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Let's clean up this space right here. Won't go too far, clean that up at the end. Now, you can cut soft steels like copper on the lathe, but unlike wood where you can do, most of the time you spend doing slicing cuts, you can also do scraping cuts. But in the metal industry, you only do scraping cuts. So I'm just going to do a little scraping cut, clean up that edge a little bit. Later. Now the rest of it is just a matter of shaping the handle to something that's going to feel good in my hand. My hand's about that long. And also, since I'm going to be, I want a place to push on my palm, so I'm going to make a nice round here. But I also might be trying to get some leverage by pushing it in with my thumb, so I'm going to make a little bit of a bead right there to accommodate the way I might use this. So start rolling a little bead right here. And the rest of this will be pretty much almost like a torpedo shape. Sanding. A lot of times in tools what I'll do, I like wet sanding. Since I'm just going to be using boiled linseed oil anyways, I just wet sand right with the boiled linseed oil. That's my favorite thing for hand tools. I don't like to put anything that builds on it because I like to feel the wood. Here's something I always do too. With spindle turning, with something with this doesn't have a lot of facets in it, and you get those cross-grained scratches when you're holding it, the pad to the sandpaper to the piece. But since there are already 220 scratches, it's very quick just to go lengthwise like this, take out those 220 scratches, and that's about all I do for a tool. I'm not trying to get. This is not a gallery piece. This is a hand tool. So, beautiful pearwood. Alright, I'm going to take care of this ferrule a little bit while we're at it. 600 grit. There we go. I'll clean this end up. Little divot will give us a way to drill our hole for the bit nice and centered. I'll clean this up on a disc center that I'll mount right into the lathe. Alright, there it is, an 1/8 inch chisel. All made with one tool, made with the round skew chisel. So now I can use this to get right into those grooves in those smaller boxes. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. This is going to be a useful little tool for cleaning up those grooves. Now this was kind of on the lathe. I was just more or less doing a demo. I wasn't trying to do any kind of educational thing, but I thought about it a long time. I make a lot of my tools out of machinist bits, a lot of my lathe tools. Probably more than half of my tools are made, shop made. So I thought about doing a video at some point on how to, there's a lot more things to cover to actually make whole tools and stuff. Thought about making a full formal video, a straight edge video just on that topic. But yeah, for now I just did a little demo and came up with a nice little 1/8 inch tool. So that's it for now. Until next time, stay safe in your shop.